make a plan and let it be iterative. That's what I would say. I think I've always tried to make a plan for my life, for what I'm doing. But what I've learned is that you have to iterate all the time. You got to constantly be changing that plan. And as you move forward with thinking how your plan is going to be executed, you get more information and you collect that information and then you pivot and change slightly. And when you come out of it, if you're listening, if you're actively paying attention and you're actively iterating, you come out with a really good plan at the end.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders in Tech podcast. As everybody knows, my beloved audience, we dedicate this time to shine the light in leaders that are really making this world a better place with the organizations they are leading. And today we have with us Mandy. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Mandy, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live? And what do you do for a living?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mandy Terrill. I am an associate CIO, Chief Information Officer for the University of California, San Francisco. And I do have to mention that all of the discussion today represents my opinions and feelings on the questions asked and are not representative of UCSF. So that is my little caveat to start off our call
Disclaimer.
today.
And
Our disclaimer.
This is the same way, Mandy, so don't worry.
Yeah. I am very fortunate to be a part of the IT leadership at UCSF, and I actually have a flexible work location. So I am on site at the UCSF campus, and then I also have an opportunity to balance family and home by also working from home part-time in Portland, Oregon. So I travel back and forth between San Francisco and Portland, which is really lovely because they're two of my favorite cities.
That is so nice. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So Mandy, how does one make it to the top? This is my question to you right now, because like being where you are at such an important institution, it doesn't happen overnight. Let's go back in time. Tell me, did you go to school? What did you go to school for?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I often ask leaders that I come in contact with and throughout my career the same type of question. It's always intriguing to me the path that people follow to get to where they're at today. And mine has been actually a really interesting path. I did not go to school for information technology. I wish that I had. I found it later in life. I actually went to school at a small college in Oregon in order to be an elementary school science teacher. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I started off at college working on a focus in science and math, and then started my student teaching and quickly learned that was not the right fit for me and decided I did not want to be a teacher. As much as I loved science and the discovery and the exploration and really the tactical components of math, it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So upon graduation, I knew I needed to find a job. I started applying everywhere I could and ended up getting a job in child welfare, working for the state of Oregon. Also not a career that I had planned nor gone to school for.
Child welfare, right?
Child welfare.
That has absolutely nothing to do with information technology. This is an amazing, amazing story. How did you end up in child welfare?
Yeah. So it was a very interesting path. During my time in college, I worked as a live-in staff supporting adults with developmental disabilities. So I would live in their home, I would cook for them, clean for them, and take care of, kind of all of the home pieces. And my supervisor at the time knew that I didn't think teaching was the right path for me. I didn't want to pursue a master's, and I was paying for my own education. So she recommended, try child welfare. You get to work with children. you're still, you get to do casework. It's very logical. It kind of checks the boxes for you. And I thought, well, that would be great. So not really knowing, I came from a very small town, a very small community. I had no idea what child welfare was. So I applied and I got a job working in Portland, Oregon for the Department of Human Services, working to transport children to visits with their parents. So I was a systems specialist analyst or assistant, an SSA, and I worked to transport children to their visits. It was really great because I, got a chance to really interact with the children and the parents and kind of see their transition and what they were working through to reunify with the children. But decided that I wanted to do casework. I wanted to be an active part of helping parents work through struggles to reunify with their children. So I applied for caseworker positions and got a casework job. Did that for about 3 years. And that is, I think child welfare caseworkers are some of the most amazing people out there because I like to describe it as a thankless, impossible job with no pay.
Thankless, impossible job. How is that?
No one wants to interact with child welfare. And when you have to, and child welfare caseworkers are constantly trying to do the best for their families with no services. I mean, there's just no services available to help parents. So you're constantly trying to find the right plan for a family. You're trying to support children, you're trying to support families. It's just a very difficult job. I happen to carry a caseload of adoption cases and that were pursuing termination of parental rights and I had a specialized caseload of adoption cases where there was egregious things that happened in the caseload, such as murder or significant abuse, or were in the media, those types of cases. So I kind of fell into this niche of my supervisor at the time really tried to give us caseloads that really spoke to our qualities. And I was very detail oriented, very good at documentation. So I happened to get this caseload, this very difficult caseload. And through that, over the 4 years that I did that work, the state of Oregon was looking to replace their child welfare information system. They call it a SACWIS system. So because I had this subject matter expertise and I was working in the largest county in Oregon, my supervisor told me that they were looking for subject matter experts to go work on this special IT project. And of course I was interested. I applied, ended up getting a job on the project. And that began my journey into information technology and building systems. So kind of a strange path to technology.
Wow.
I went back to school.
So did you learn the job while you were actually doing the job, or did you go to a specific course, or how do you figure it out?
Yeah, I did both. So again, never had not had any exposure to building systems or doing information technology. I came from, again, a very small town family who did, manual labor. So technology but I'd always loved science and math, and technology just really spoke to those types of things. So I started learning on the job, started learning about how you customized systems. The state of Oregon had purchased a system from another state, and they were working to configure and customize that system to be able to meet the requirements of the child welfare business operations within the state of Oregon. And so I started learning what that meant to do business analysis, what it meant to do training, consultation, requirements, I was brought on when we started developing the RFP. So I learned how to do a full project from the planning phase all the way through the implementation phase. onto operations. So it was really a great learning experience for my career. I immediately found a huge passion for it and started investigating every course I could. I did the project management certificate program because I loved project management. Did business analysis classes, business analysis certifications, and then proceeded to get my master's in information technology with a specialty in leadership and project management.
Okay, so you did go to school so
Yeah,
you managed to actually go to school at the end, right?
yeah. So I knew I had a wonderful mentor at the time. I've always had mentors throughout my career. That's been something I learned early on, is to have someone who can help guide you. And those mentors have to change. There always comes a time when you have to change mentors based on where you're going. That mentor recommended going back to school with my master's because of my prior background. What she said to me was, having your master's will give you a leg up against folks that maybe have more experience with their bachelor's and their undergrad than you do. So I did go back while being a new mom and a new career, and went back and proceeded to get my master's as well.
Were you doing your master's while you were a new mom?
Yes.
That takes a lot of time.
I have a wonderful husband who partnered with me and scaled back his own job to part-time. He actually works for child welfare still as a child welfare caseworker, and he was able to scale back to part-time and stay home with our son while I proceeded to get my master's. So I was working full-time, traveling an hour and a half to my job site, and then in the evenings was doing my master's on evenings and weekends.
It's incredible that your story. I am a man of faith, so I love Jesus Christ. He saved my life. And when you start paying attention what the Bible says, I never read the Bible before until 2 years ago. I told the Lord, I'm not going to die until I read the Bible entirely. So I finished last year in December. But I say these things because how beautiful it is that you have a husband that supported you, mm-hmm. and that allowed you to create a career for yourself. And now you are at the top level in technology. And if you look and open that wonderful, beautiful book, which is God's word, it says, you shall leave your mother and your father, and you should join your husband and wife, and you should become one. Mm-hmm. And that's the secret to my success. Exactly like you. If I would have been by myself, it would have been, I don't think I would have made it the way how successful I am, because my wife supported me all the way long. To give you an idea, first, I needed to get a computer science degree so I could support my family, and I was in love with computer science. So she stayed home. Mm-hmm. and she figured it out, and she got a job, and I was full-time student and also full-time working, but we already had 2 kids. So she stayed home, and she was doing homework and bringing income while I was going through this. And then later on in life, I had a beautiful job, and it was her turn. And so she went to computer science school, uh-huh. and I covered everything else. You see? So as a team, we were able to make it so far, exactly like you. And all we did is follow the instructions.
Yeah. No, but I think you hit the nail on the head. As a team, you do it all as a team. And that's how we did it. You just work as a team.
So what was your first management or leadership role as a technologist?
As a technologist? So I came from a family of business owners, and they worked all the time. My dad is still not retired and works all the time. So what was kind of modeled to me was this incredible work ethic, always 110% in everything that you do, even if it's not what you're enjoying. You put in your full effort. And so when I graduated high school and went to college, I had always had jobs. I had had a number of jobs. I had worked all through high school, paid for my car, paid for my own clothes, all the things my dad was able to provide, but he was a single father for a period of time. And so anything extra above what he could provide for us, we had to do on our own. And during that time, so I also had to pay for my own college and support myself once I graduated high school. So I, came into the workforce as a college student, having a number of, career experience, and held lower end management positions, supervisor, lead positions, those type of things. I could just kind of always have gravitated towards those lead positions. So when I joined the child welfare replacement project, they were building the team, they were bringing in the vendor. I immediately went back and started getting the certifications that I needed, learning about the job, getting on the job experience, and made it very clear to my leaders that I wanted to be in a leadership position on the project, because I was enjoying it so much. And I took the first job that I took was as the project management office manager on that project. So about 2.5 years into the project, they opened up the PMO manager position. I applied and got the position, which was really great. And I had, again, my supervisor at the time helped mentor me on what it means to lead a PMO. I talked with other state PMO managers to learn kind of what they were doing. So I think whenever I take on a leadership position, my approach is the first 6 months is all learning and discovery. I spend a great deal of time in those first 6 months just talking, making a list of all the stakeholders I need to speak with. What do I need to learn about the job? What's working, what's not, what's worked for them, learning lessons. I make a huge list. And then after that 6 months, I develop my strategy for how to execute the job. In this case, because it was a project, I had to jump in, to where the PMO manager who was retiring. I spent about 2 weeks just really picking the brain of that person, understanding everything that was working, what wasn't working, and then start developing a strategy very quickly for how I was going to help address the things that needed to be, revised or revamped for the PMO. So that was my first leadership job, was the PMO manager on that project.
When I was going through life, my dad was an entrepreneur too. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. Actually, he had 7 different businesses before he passed away. And he told me, my responsibility with you ends when you turn 18. Mm-hmm. If you finish high school, or if you finish a career by then, good for you. And I'll pay for all the education that you want until you reach 18. And he did exactly that. I had my first computer science degree when I was 19, but that extra year I already had to pay for. And then I moved to Canada, and of course I was married, I already had a baby girl, and I paid for everything myself. Uh-huh. And I believe that at that time I was thinking my dad's like, I see all the other kids in school and their parents are paying for everything and they're slacking off. They are full-time students, but they have a lot of free time. And I'm like, wow, I'm here working a full-time job and going to school full-time, going to bed until 1 a.m. every day. And I said, I wish my dad had more resources, but it wasn't that. He was teaching me a lesson. He was teaching me how to be a leader of my own life. Mm-hmm. And that's what your dad did with you. If you are not the leader of your own life, you can never be a leader of anybody else. It's the first thing. And how do you become a leader of your own life? By taking responsibility of the things that you need and want, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I remember thinking that, I came from a town where a resort town, lots of financial wealth, and also going to a college where most of my friends' parents were paying for their education. And I was working 2 jobs, going to school full time, like you said, going to bed some days exhausted, thinking, I don't know how I'm going to eat tomorrow. How am I going to, and I have to get up and go to class, and I have to take care of these people. I was working in the home for developmental disabilities. And I was thinking, I have to get up in the morning and cook for this kid who's 18 and get him to high school, and then get myself to school and pay my bills and eat. It was a lot. It was a lot of responsibility. But you become, like you said, you become a leader of your own life. You figure it out.
What did you do right after that role in leadership in technology? what was your next career move?
Oh, so my next career move. So the out of that opportunity, there was another role that opened up. So the project, a definition of project is a beginning and an end. So the project came to an end. We were getting ready to roll the system out into operations, and I was given the option to apply for an operations manager, go back to child welfare and work as a supervisor, or apply for a supervisor position back out in the field, or to apply for additional project. And I knew going back to child welfare was not the path for me. I knew it was technology. So I applied for a new project, which was a very difficult and my first failed project. It was for working on an innovator grant for the health system for the state of Oregon. So it was bringing in the health marketplace that was being positioned. So I worked with our CIO for DHS and helped write the innovator grant and apply. We received the grant and started to stand up the project, and that did not go well. It was a huge challenge, which is why a number of states failed, including Oregon. We worked really hard to try and stand this up, and it just didn't go well. But out of that, I worked on a couple other projects. I was the PMO manager at the time, hired 42 people, very quickly had to write job descriptions, hiring, get all the project processes in place, built a project notebook for, how to execute a project from start to finish, had to meet with the legislature. So while it was a project that I would say definitely failed, there was a lot. I learned more, or probably more on that project than I did on any other project that I worked on. So exposed me to quite a bit, and then also gave me an opportunity to work for the Oregon Health Authority on some projects with health. And then from that point, as that project, we started to hand off that project to a new project team. I applied for the Oregon Health and Science University, OHSU, and received a job as a project manager working on another project, and had stayed at OHSU for over 10 years before taking on my recent leadership role. And that was a really fantastic place to work, really fantastic experience, worked on a number of projects there in leadership roles as well, and really enjoyed, I think for me, the mission is really important. So I've always, it also gave me an opportunity to learn about education. So the education side, and really be exposed to an academic environment, because I had been at a state entity for 10 years. And then now I was learning all about the academic environment and healthcare.
Mandy, what did you learn during those 10 years? Because it looks like it was the longest stretch of your IT career path, right? What was the most important lesson?
Oh gosh, so many important lessons. I think the most important lesson from that 10 years was surrounding yourself with trusted staff who know their work and trust them to do their job. That was probably what I've learned the most. Projects, IT is so complicated, and there's so many components to making an infrastructure or a platform or a technology or a system work, that you have to find individuals who specialize in and can take their area of specialty and contribute to the outcome or the support of that particular whatever instance you happen to be focused on. And you have to build trust with that team and help them feel successful in the end. So I would say relying on your team, trusting in those individuals and finding people that trust in you to lead them through.
That's amazing, Mandy. To get your final role, what was the selection process? Did you have to fight for the job, or they said, "Oh no, this is the one"?
No, it was a long process and a very mixed emotional process for me. So I mentioned I've always had a mentor. I always have a 5-year plan. I set 5-year goals. And so this position was actually a part of I knew that I wanted to be a vice president or an associate CIO in the technology space. But this position actually came forward for me a few years earlier than I had planned in my 5-year goal. I had I've always had really great managers. I think it's also important to always, align yourself with good leadership and make sure, even as a leader, you have strong mentors or mentor leadership that you can work with. So my supervisor at the time and my chief information officer, this position was presented to my chief information officer. She brought it to me and my supervisor, and her words were, "I don't want to lose you. And this position will be a huge growth opportunity for you, but it would be really good for you to go through the interview process because you've articulated to me this is the next step in your career." And so I so appreciated that. I made sure and always voiced my 5-year goals to my supervisor and to my leadership. And so when I went through the interview process, I did not think I would get offered the position. I also did not plan on leaving OHSU. I thought I would be at OHSU until I retired.
Right.
Really, to be quite honest. So I started the process. It was a series of 4 panel interviews. So I had to meet with panels of representatives in 4 separate interviews, and then 2 leadership interviews, screening interviews, and then 2 final interviews one-on-one with each of my managers. So I actually have I directly report to the CIO for UCSF. I also have a dotted line report to the Vice Chancellor for Research. And so I'm accountable to each of those, each one of those leaders. And so both of them were my final interviews and then selection. So in total, I think it was 7 interviews that I went through for this position.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Without even knowing if you're going to get the job or not, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was really great experience. I hadn't had that much interview experience in about 9 years. So it was a lot.
You know that for me, having a 7-job interview, it's a huge learning experience. Even if you didn't get the job, it was worth going through that, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely worth going through it. And it really, it gave me a lot of, I had to reflect after every single interview, as most of us do when we go through those type of interviews, like, oh, what could I have done better? What should I have said? What, how could this have been, how should I have articulated better on this point? And so then I felt like the interviews got better and better because I had time to kind of reflect in between. But it was still quite the experience.
What would you tell yourself? You could go back to a time machine and you go right after the day that you knew that big project failed. What would you tell to yourself?
Failure's okay. Failure helps us grow. I tell my son this all the time, that we have to embrace and accept failure. And we need to normalize it. It's a part of life. None of us are perfect. And while at the time it feels heavy and it feels like it's not okay, it really is. And it gives you an opportunity to look back and say, here's what I can do better. And here's how I'm going to come out of this stronger. And when I go, here are the things that I'm going to look for. And most of the time I'll be successful, but if I fail again, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to try again.
That's why you are where you are. I believe that we learn more from failures than from success. When you have success, it's beautiful, but you're really not learning anything because you succeeded. So you already knew what it took to succeed. But when you fail, you're figuring out what happened, how can I make it better, and how can I try again? It reminds me of Edison, right? He tried more than 1,000 times on how to make the light bulb, but he never gave up. He will say, he has a quote that says, I didn't fail. I just found another way not to get it done, how not to get there, right?
Yeah, I know.
So as long as you take your failure and you learn from it and then you pivot and figure out the other way, then it's a learning experience. It's not failure.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that that's something we as a society need to start normalizing and helping, especially our, the younger generation coming into the workforce, that yes, we have expectations and goals, but if you fail, it's okay. And it's a part of communicating, why did that failure happen? How are we learning from it? And how are we going to pivot to try and make things better? So I think want to stress that for especially new folks coming into the career, because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially being new into this type of environment, to make things perfect and to be perfect. And that's a really difficult task. And I don't think that is something that we should focus on.
That's beautiful. Mandy, I'm going to ask you one last question. This podcast has been so full packed of advice, but I would want to respect your time too. And I know you're a busy professional. Tell me, if you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
Oh gosh. That's a really good question. That's a hard question. I think I would write on it, make a plan and let it be iterative. That's what I would say. I think I've always tried to make a plan for my life, for what I'm doing. But what I've learned is that you have to iterate all the time. You got to constantly be changing that plan. And as you move forward with thinking how your plan is going to be executed, you get more information and you collect that information and then you pivot and change slightly. And when you come out of it, if you're listening, if you're actively paying attention and you're actively iterating, you come out with a really good plan at the end. And I think that I've applied that throughout my life.
You just gave the best advice ever for success in life. That's actually how we run projects. One of my companies is a custom software solutions company. Every single project we do is with that based in mind. We have a goal, we have a plan, but we iterate and reiterate. And every 30 days, we look what's going on. What did we learn? What did we make a mistake on? And finally, at the end, the finished product is much better than what we started with. But it's because we're willing to fail short. We fail fast. We learn from that failure, and then we implement more and more and more. And that company is being around for 19 years because of that.
Yeah, I think I think that's why I love the Scrum methodology, is because you're sitting down and everyone's involved in actively coming out with the solution, but you don't have the solution set first. You have an idea, you have a goal, kind of where you want to get to. And sometimes the output is completely different, like you said, than what you thought it would be, than what you may have envisioned when you started that goal.
Amazing. Mandy, thank you so much for your time. If people would like to follow you or ask you more questions, where can they find you?
Oh, yes, of course. I am on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to please follow me on LinkedIn or message me there. I think that's probably the best social. I also, because I spend all day on the computer and on Zoom and in and out of meetings and reviewing technical, documentation, I do take a mental break in the evenings and stay off social media. So that's probably the best social media platform to reach me on is LinkedIn.
Yeah, actually, I personally am out of all social media except LinkedIn because that's my professional venue. And then for entertainment, I have a premium subscription to YouTube. That is not social media; it's just a channel, and I get to watch whatever I want without commercials.
Yeah.
Mandy, thank you so much. God bless you, and have a beautiful rest of the week.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.